The wedding dress felt like a shroud. Natasha stood in the cramped bedroom of her childhood apartment, staring at her reflection in the clouded mirror, and wondered if this was what it felt like to be buried alive. Outside, she could hear her father's labored breathing, the rattle in his chest that had become the soundtrack to their lives over the past 6 months. Stage 4 lung cancer, the doctors had said. 6 months, maybe 8 if he was lucky. But luck had abandoned their family long ago, somewhere between her mother's death and the mountain of medical bills that now threatened to consume them whole. "You look beautiful, Natashka," her father whispered from the doorway, his skeletal frame propped against the peeling wallpaper. Once, he had been a robust man, a factory supervisor with dreams of sending his daughter to university. Now, he was a ghost haunting his own life, desperate to secure her future before he slipped away entirely. "Papa, I can't do this," Natasha's voice cracked. "I don't even know him. Victor is just a mechanic. He works in that grimy garage downtown. He's a good man," her father interrupted, shuffling into the room. "He doesn't drink. He doesn't gamble. When I asked around about him, everyone said the same thing. Viktor Volkov is honest." "In this world, Natasha, that's rarer than gold." He reached for her hand, his grip weak but insistent. "I'm dying. This apartment will be sold to pay my debts. I need to know you'll have a roof over your head, food on your table. Victor agreed to marry you, to take care of you. Please, let me die in peace." How do you argue with a dying man? How do you tell your father that you'd rather face the world alone than marry a stranger who smelled of motor oil and had grease permanently embedded under his fingernails? So Natasha swallowed her protests, kissed her father's papery cheek, and walked toward a future she couldn't imagine wanting. The wedding was a grim affair at the city hall, just her father in a wheelchair, Victor in a clean but ill-fitting suit, and 2 witnesses pulled from the street. Victor barely looked at her during the ceremony. His face was weathered beyond his 32 years, with deep-set gray eyes that seemed to carry their own private sorrows. When he slipped the simple gold band onto her finger, his hands were gentle, but he didn't smile. Neither did she. After signing the papers, Victor helped her father into an old but immaculately maintained sedan. "This is my car," he said quietly, the first full sentence he'd spoken to her all day. "I rebuilt the engine myself. She'll never break down on you." They drove to a small house on the outskirts of the city, a modest 2-story structure with faded blue shutters and a garden that had seen better days. It wasn't the cramped apartment she'd grown up in, but it wasn't much more. Victor carried her father inside to a ground-floor bedroom he'd already prepared with a hospital bed, oxygen tank, and medical supplies that must have cost a fortune. "How did you afford all this?" Natasha asked, suspicious. Victor shrugged. "I save my money. Don't spend it on stupid things." Over the following weeks, Natasha discovered that her new husband was a man of few words but consistent actions. He left for the garage at 6 every morning and returned at 7 every evening, his clothes stained with oil, his face tired. But he never complained. He cooked simple meals, nothing fancy, but everything edible and filling. He sat with her father in the evenings, playing chess or simply keeping him company while Natasha took breaks to walk in the garden. He asked nothing of her. He didn't even try to enter her bedroom, sleeping instead on a worn couch in the living room. "Why are you being so kind?" she asked him one night, unable to contain her confusion any longer. Victor looked up from the engine manual he was reading, his expression unreadable. "Your father is dying. You're scared and alone. Why would I make it worse?" It was such a simple answer, but it cracked something open inside her chest. She realized she'd been braced for cruelty, for demands, for the inevitable moment when Victor would claim his rights as a husband. But that moment never came. Her father died on a Tuesday morning, with both of them holding his hands. Victor handled all the arrangements, the funeral, the paperwork, the sale of the apartment to settle the debts. He did it efficiently, without fanfare, asking Natasha for input but never burdening her with the details. At the funeral, he stood slightly behind her, a silent presence, and when she finally broke down sobbing at the graveside, he handed her his handkerchief without a word. The house felt emptier after. Natasha wandered through the rooms, uncertain of her place in this strange new life. She was married to a man she barely knew, living in a house that didn't feel like home, with no family left and no clear purpose. She started cleaning obsessively, trying to create order out of the chaos in her heart. She scrubbed the kitchen until it gleamed, tackled the overgrown garden, organized the cluttered garage where Victor kept his tools. It was in the garage, while sorting through boxes of old parts, that she found the first clue that something didn't add up. A letter, addressed to Viktor Volkov, CEO. She stared at it, confused. CEO of what? The garage where he worked. But mechanics didn't get letters with embossed letterheads and corporate logos. She tucked it back, telling herself it was none of her business, that she was probably misunderstanding. But then there were other small things. The way Viktor's simple mechanics tools included equipment she'd never seen before, precision instruments that looked absurdly expensive. The calls he sometimes took in another room, speaking in English in a tone completely different from his usual quiet demeanor, using words like acquisition, and portfolio, and board meeting. The fact that despite working at a small garage, they never seemed to worry about money, the bills were always paid, the refrigerator always full, and when the roof started leaking, he had it repaired without hesitation. One evening, curiosity overwhelmed her discretion. While Viktor was in the shower, she opened his laptop, which he'd left on the kitchen table. She didn't have to snoop far. His email was open, and the screen was filled with messages from investment firms, tech companies, and business partners. She clicked on one, her hands trembling, and began to read. Viktor Volkov wasn't just a mechanic. He was the founder and CEO of an automotive technology company that had revolutionized electric engine systems. His patents were worth hundreds of millions. The company had gone public 3 years ago, making him one of the wealthiest men in the country. But after his wife and infant daughter had died in a car accident 5 years prior, an accident caused by a mechanical failure in a luxury vehicle, he'd walked away from it all. He'd placed a trusted team in charge, donated most of his wealth to safety research and orphanages, and retreated into anonymity, working as a regular mechanic because it was the only thing that still made sense to him. The only thing that felt real. Natasha sat back, her mind reeling. The man who slept on the couch because he didn't want to intrude on her space. The man who had married her to help a dying father he barely knew. The man who worked with his hands in a grimy garage when he could have been living in a mansion. He was a millionaire, no, a multimillionaire, who had chosen to live like this. Who had chosen her? She heard the shower turn off and quickly closed the laptop, her heart pounding. When Viktor emerged, toweling his hair, she was sitting at the table with tea, trying to look normal. Viktor, she said slowly, why do you work at that garage? He paused, studying her face, and she knew he could see that she'd discovered something. He sat down across from her with a heavy sigh. You found out. Why didn't you tell me? Her voice wasn't angry, just bewildered. Because it doesn't matter, he said simply. Money didn't save my wife. It didn't save my daughter. It just made me a target for people who wanted things from me, who pretended to care but only saw dollar signs. After they died, I realized I'd built an empire but lost everything that mattered. So I gave most of it away and kept enough to live simply, to help people when I could, to work with my hands and remember what it feels like to fix something that's broken. He looked at her directly then, his gray eyes intense. Your father came to me because someone told him I was a decent man who might help. Not because I was rich. And I married you because you deserved better than being thrown onto the streets when your father died. Not because I wanted something from you. Tears spilled down Natasha's cheeks. You've been sleeping on the couch for 3 months. You didn't marry me by choice. I wasn't going to make you feel trapped. She reached across the table and took his oil-stained hands in hers. Viktor, I don't know what to say. You could have told me. You could have. I could have what? Impressed you with money. Bought your affection. He shook his head. I wanted you to know me as I really am. A man who fixes cars and makes mediocre soup and reads before bed. If you could care about that man, then maybe we'd have something real. Something that couldn't be destroyed. Natasha realized in that moment that she'd already been falling for him, for his quiet strength, his unexpected gentleness, the way he'd honored her father in his final days. The money didn't change who he was. If anything, the fact that he'd hidden it made her respect him more. The couch looks uncomfortable, she said softly. There's room in the bedroom. If you want it. Viktor's eyes widened slightly, the first real surprise she'd seen on his face. Natasha, I'm not saying we have to. She laughed nervously. I'm saying I'd like to try. To build something real. If you're willing to be patient with me. For the first time since she'd met him, Viktor smiled. It transformed his entire face, erasing years of sorrow and revealing the man he must have been before tragedy struck. I've got nothing but time, he said. And I've gotten very good at fixing broken things. They sat there in the kitchen, hands intertwined across the scarred wooden table, two wounded people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way. Outside, the evening settled into night, and inside, something new began to grow, something fragile and tentative but rooted in honesty, in kindness, in the revolutionary idea that maybe, just maybe, the best things in life aren't bought or bargained for but simply chosen, one quiet day at a time.